Welcome. I am Trisha Sotropa and I work for SAPDC. And this is my colleague who I love to be a geek with and talk about pedagogy.
Hi, I'm Adelee and I also work for SAPDC.
So Adelee and I have been doing some work with the new curriculum. And we talked about some planning pieces and some assessment pieces. And I was trying to create a rubric that maybe showed all the ways that students get things wrong. And Adelee suggested that we try a single point rubric, also called a 1 point rubric. And I didn't know very much about it. So Adelee introduced me to this way of assessing, and I wanted to be able to share it with more people. So Adelee, I would love you to share your wisdom with more people.
Oh, thanks. Well, Trish, I was thinking about how we might start sharing a little bit about single point rubrics, 1 point rubrics. And I'm thinking that maybe we start with what the main components of the rubric are, and then maybe we get into some of the why we might continue to move forward with it. So if we look at the single point rubric, one of the first things I think that folks notice is that it is really an outline for success criteria of an assessment. And the brilliance of a single point rubric is that it doesn't have to be for a specific assignment. It's about how we might demonstrate our work in an ongoing manner, and it leaves room on either side for written feedback about meeting expectations and areas of improvement for both student reflection and teacher reflection. And so there's really only three main things that we need to consider when we're looking at a 3-point rubric. And one of them is concerns, notes for what needs to be improved, criteria for the proficient performance. So what does success criteria look like for students? And we tend to write it in a way that each of our students in our class could see themselves in that work. And so when we think about the continuum for differentiation, we think about the continuum of students that we have in our classes. We want to write that success criteria and that proficient performance place in a way that wherever I am on the continuum of learning and being able to demonstrate my learning, I see myself in there and I can see how I might hit that benchmark. And then the strengths, so notes on how the work exceeded expectations, or things that, hey, this is really neat that you did. I think those are really the big three things we need to consider when we're actually creating something for our classrooms.
I really like how you explained how we put in those meaningful comments to a way of communicating with our students. Thanks.
And so if we look here at, I'm just giving another single point rubric, and because I'm working with my beautiful English goddess on this, I tried to do something that was ELA-esque. I have stolen it from Dana Hashim. You'll see that I've given her credit on the bottom there, but it's a single point rubric around how we might put together a thesis statement, an overall argument, length, grammar, and formatting. So you can see here that what we've got is something that could be done for any of our writing pieces.
Yeah, I can see how this is really adaptable to different situations too.
And I love Dana's language, Trish. Like, she's got things we can improve and then things that were amazing. I think every kid needs to hear what piece is amazing of their work, and we can always find something. And then I will be assessing your essay on it. And then these are the things I'm going to be looking for and some standards to hit. So I like the way she's personalized it. And we certainly see teachers doing that.
Yeah, and from a student's point of view, it would be clear and easy to do the work, to know what you have to include.
Yeah, and what you need to target.
Right.
So if we look here, one of the things, there's a couple of things I really like about One Point Rubrics that, as we were talking, Trish, really came to mind from some of the conversations we've had. I love that it gives space for reflection. When we think about how we might embed social emotional learning, mental health supports into our work, how do we help students self-regulate? How do we help them feel comfortable and competent in areas where maybe I feel like I don't feel really great about writing, or I don't feel really great about my math, or I don't feel really good about what we're doing. We give a chance to reflect on strengths and weaknesses. And we give a chance for people to, teachers and students, to meaningfully share what they did well, where they might want to make adjustments. What do I need to learn next time? Where do I might like to go? I think that's one thing that's a real strength about a 1-point rubric. The other piece that I think is really good is, I'm getting ahead of myself. Is really good is it reduces boundaries on student performance. And again, when we think about differentiation and we think about putting something up that each student can see themselves in, we don't have a rubric that tries to cover every part of the project that could go well or poorly, like you talked about from the beginning. It gives guidance and then allows students to approach the project in a creative and a unique way. So if we have students that look at it, for example, the essay is 2 to 3 pages long. Perhaps they'd like to do that in some kind of a visual representation. Perhaps they'd like to videotape themselves. Like maybe there are other ways, and it gives the opportunity for students to kind of steer their own direction rather than relying on teacher direction, and gives them a chance to put their own ideas into an assignment, which sometimes we don't have. And so when we've got these 1-point rubrics, it gives students to go, oh, okay, well, this is still the benchmark from last time. I appreciate knowing what that is, but now that I see the assignment, could I take it in this direction? And the more we give that student voice, I think we both know like the work and the limit is boundless then.
Right. That's a very good point, that you've named what proficient looks like. And if they have ideas past that, they're welcome to include that.
One of the things that we certainly have struggled with in not only both of our careers, but also as we support teachers, is that students really rank and want to compare themselves to each other. And that leads to some toxic pieces in a classroom. And so if we move in this direction, what it does is give students the opportunity to receive unique feedback that is specific to their own particular work, that can't easily be quantified. So Trish and Adelee both get to shine in a class. We both feel really good. I can share what I do well. Trish can share what she does well, but we can bloom next to each other, right? Like the old adage that flowers don't worry about what happens with each other. They just bloom next to each other. And I think this is one in a classroom, that's where we want students to feel like, what is my best, rather than what is my best in comparison to the other people's best in the room, because that really isn't very important.
Right. I had not thought of it that way before, but yes, that we're not competing against each other. We're doing our own personal best, and that can look different. Yeah, it will look different for sure.
When we want it to, right? So how do we encourage that?
Yeah.
I think it takes attention off grades. You and I have talked about blueprinting before. We've talked about, giving assignments back without marks on it to help, like all of those things. I think the design of this rubric emphasizes, again, descriptive, individualized feedback over a grade. Instead of focusing on teacher instruction in order to aim for a grade, students get a chance to really immerse themselves in the experience of the assignment, of the task, of the piece that you're asking them to do. Just do a deep dive, do your best. Let's talk about how your best can look. But again, I'm not focusing on, is it an A for me and is it a B for somebody else? Those things don't need to be part of the discourse at this time, because we're talking about learning.
Okay. So are you recommending this for formative assessment primarily, only?
You could use it for summative, but I don't think that isn't the task of a single point rubric. You're absolutely right. It's about the formative feedback loops. It's about how do I have that ongoing conversation with each student in my class as best as I can with the time that we have, and how can I personalize pieces for each of the students depending on where they are at in the learning continuum.
Okay, thank you. That's really a useful way to think about work in a classroom. Yeah.
I think it gives us more flexibility too, Trish, without sacrificing the clarity of the success criteria. So we're really clear on what's successful. But again, I'm given clear explanations for if we want to move into a grade. I know that I didn't hit in this case the length that I was supposed to. I wasn't citing MLA. My argument was not clear. It wasn't creative. It wasn't consistently supported. Like, I can take a look at, like, you can pull out and you could assess from here. But again, there's a lot more room for a student taking a project in a direction that a holistic or an analytic rubric couldn't account for, because they're too specific to the assignment. And so this gives me a chance to go, okay, I need to make a clear argument, but I might like to create a court case. I might like to, I might like to do a play. I might like to have a visual piece of part of it. I might like to do an oral part. So my script might be 2 to 3 pages, but I'm going to be presenting something in a different way because that's how I would like to show you what I know. And a different rubric doesn't always allow for that flexibility because it's too precise and too prescriptive about what's okay and what's not okay.
That sounds like a great way to honor students' learning, all of those points. Yeah.
I think and the last thing I think I just want to say is that it's simple. Like, one of the things that I like is that, we talk a lot. Trisha and I have talked a lot, like, through our time and our geeking out, as she talked about from the front, about how do we get students' voice? How do we help students be part of the conversation in the classroom? Well, a single point rubric has a lot less text. So if you're going to do speech to text, you're going to create different ways for different students to be able to access your 1 point rubric. Really easy, because there's 3 things that I need to now make accessible. The odds that your student are going to be able to read and comprehend and reflect on this feedback are higher, because I'm probably going to read this whole rubric because there isn't a lot to a 1 point rubric traditionally. I'm going to be able to reflect on the piece of the feedback because it's going to be around my success criteria. And so I'm linking it back to this piece so that on my next assignment, I know that, what I didn't do with my thesis statement last time was make an interesting argument. And I wasn't clear on exactly what I was going to talk about or where I might be going. I mean, we all know thesis statements are traditionally quite challenging for kids, right? And so now I've got some specific feedback on that part of my writing. Then at my overall argument, I'm also getting specific feedback. So I can think about that piece. I can think about my grammar. I can think about where I'm going, and I'm probably going to be able to remember that and be able to have reciprocity for my next assignment. Whereas with some of our very, very specific rubrics for an assignment, and I'm not suggesting we shouldn't use them, there's a place for them, but they can be really hard sometimes for students, depending on where we are again on the learning continuum, to have reciprocity for that amount of specific feedback to really know where do I need to go next.
Yeah, the simplicity is helpful both for the teacher and the student to know what needs to be there and how they can grow from it. Yeah. Well, Adelee, I love how you summed that up and shared how some of our conversations have led to this point. I hope that other people give these single point or 1 point rubrics a try. And maybe they even contact us if they're interested in working on them further.
Absolutely. We'd love to reach out and help you think through your own 1 point rubric journey. Thanks so much for watching today.